Some seconds last forever, changing the course of a life in the blink of an eye. We capture those eternal moments and turn them into cinematic art that speaks to the timeless nature of the soul. Subscribe today and explore the infinite with us.
Take your junk and go die somewhere. You don't live here anymore. My own son shoved a torn duffel bag into my chest and slammed the front door in my face. I stumbled backward onto the porch, 67 years old, snow starting to fall on my shoulders, thinking my life was finally, truly over. But when I unzipped that bag 2 blocks away, I found $620,000 in cash and a folded photograph with an address scrawled on the back. 12 hours later, I drove through a blizzard to a cabin in the White Mountains. When I knocked on that door, the person who opened it brought me straight to my knees. The woman standing in that New Hampshire cabin changed everything I thought I knew about my family. But before I tell you who she was, let me ask you something. Have you ever been called worthless by someone you'd have died for? Drop "been there" in the comments below, because what comes next only makes sense if you understand that kind of pain. My name is Walter Kessler. I'm 67 years old, a widower for 6 years now. Until that January night in Concord, Massachusetts, I believed I had raised a good son. I spent 42 years as a master electrician, running Kessler Electric out of a workshop I built behind our house on Linden Avenue. When my wife Ruth was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer back in 2019, I sold the business for a fraction of what it was worth so I could be at her bedside every single day. Ruth fought hard. She lost anyway. I kept the house we'd raised our boy in, the colonial with the green shutters she'd painted herself one summer afternoon. That house was worth just over $1.9 million now, sitting on a double lot close to downtown. It was the last thing I had left of her. My son Nathan married Vanessa Prescott 4 years ago. She was a pharmaceutical sales rep with a laugh that never quite reached her eyes, and a habit of looking around rooms like she was calculating square footage. They moved in with me 18 months back after Nathan lost his position as a regional logistics manager. "Just until we get back on our feet, Dad," he promised. I told him take all the time you need. He was my only child. The house echoed too much without Ruth. But things had changed in the last 6 months. Vanessa started rearranging furniture without asking. My workshop out back, the one Ruth helped me insulate in 1993, got turned into her home office. Nathan stopped meeting my eyes at dinner. And then came the papers. That Thursday night in early January, Nathan slid a manila folder across the kitchen table while Vanessa poured herself a glass of Pinot Grigio and watched me with that thin, careful smile. "Dad, we've been talking. You need to sign this. It's a quitclaim deed. Transfer the house into a trust with me and Vanessa as co-trustees." I set down my coffee cup. "Son, I'm not dying. I'm 67, not 97. Vanessa laughed, high and brittle. "Walter, it's not about dying. It's about planning. What if you slip on the ice tomorrow? What if you forget to turn off the stove? This house is worth almost $2 million. We need to protect it." "Protect it from what?" I asked. "From me?" Nathan's jaw tightened in a way I hadn't seen since he was 14 and caught lying about a broken window. "Dad, don't be difficult. Just sign." Outside, snow was starting to fall against the windows. New England in January, right on schedule. I looked at my son, at the man I taught to solder wires when he was 10, and I saw somebody I didn't recognize. "No," I said quietly. "I'm not signing anything tonight." Vanessa set her wine glass down hard. "Walter, I'm going to be honest with you. You're a drain on our lives. You shuffle around in your slippers. You leave the TV on half the night. And you've been forgetting things. Nathan and I deserve a future, and you're standing in the way of it." I turned to my son. "Nathan, is that what you think?" He didn't answer. He stared down at his plate, his fingers twisting his wedding ring the way his mother used to twist hers when she was holding something back. "My boy, my little boy who used to ride on my shoulders to the hardware store." I waited. He said nothing. Vanessa stood up. "Get out. Tonight. We'll pack your things." "This is my house," I said. "Not for long," Nathan finally muttered, still not looking at me. 15 minutes later, my son opened the closet in the hallway and pulled out an old canvas duffel bag. split along the seam and stained with something dark. He jammed a few of my shirts into it and threw it at my feet. "Take your junk and go die somewhere," he said, voice shaking like he was reading lines from a script someone else had written. "You don't live here anymore." Vanessa pushed me toward the front door. My son wouldn't lift his eyes. The door slammed. I stood on the porch in my house slippers, the snow already soaking through, holding that torn duffel bag in both hands. The porch light clicked off. They wanted me gone, completely, from the windows, too. I walked 2 blocks through the snow before my legs gave out, and I sank onto a bench at the closed bus stop outside St. Mary's Church. The wind cut through my cardigan. My feet went numb inside those slippers. The duffel sat beside me like a corpse. I was 67 years old, widowed and discarded by the only child I had left. I didn't cry. I sat there for a long time watching snow gather on the street lamp, and something inside me just went quiet. Eventually, because I had nowhere else to look, I looked at the bag. That's when everything changed. The zipper was broken halfway down, so I pried the rest of it open, with fingers I could barely feel. I expected old clothes, maybe the cheap suit I wore to Ruth's funeral. Instead, my hand closed around something cold and tight and wrapped in plastic. I pulled out a brick of $100 bills. My breath stopped. I pulled out another, and another. Beneath my 3 rumpled shirts, the bag was stuffed with vacuum-sealed packets of cash, each one banded and stacked like something out of a movie. I counted under the street lamp with shaking hands, twice to make sure I wasn't losing my mind. $620,000. "What in God's name?" I whispered into the empty street. At the very bottom of the bag, folded twice inside a waterproof sleeve, I found a photograph in the letter. The photograph was of my granddaughter, Emma, Nathan's daughter from his first marriage, the one he cut off 2 years ago after her mother passed. Emma was 24 now, standing in front of a small log cabin with a red door, holding up a set of keys. On the back, in her handwriting, was an address: Birch Hollow Road, Franconia, New Hampshire, about 3 hours north. The letter was 4 pages long. Grandpa, if you're reading this, it means Dad and Vanessa finally did it. Please forgive me for the timing. Please forgive me for every word they're saying to you right now. None of it is true, and I've been planning this for 4 months. Grandpa, Dad is in serious trouble. He owes $1.4 million to a private lender out of Boston after an investment scheme collapsed in September. Vanessa has been gambling online for 2 years. Together, they've run through every line of credit they have. The house is the only asset big enough to dig them out. But it's worse than that, Grandpa. I came by the house the Tuesday before Thanksgiving to see you. You weren't home. You'd gone to the VA clinic, remember? I let myself in with the spare key you gave me. I heard Vanessa on the phone in the kitchen. She was talking to a man named Declan Voss. I'm sure it was him because I looked him up later. He has a record. She was asking him what a quiet exit for a senior would cost. She said the word father-in-law. She said the words, "no autopsy town." Grandpa, I heard her laugh while she said it. I couldn't go to the police with just my word against hers. I didn't have a recording. I didn't have anything. I drove home that night and I threw up on the side of Route 93, and I knew I was the only person in the world who could save you. The $620,000 in this bag is mine. I know you think I'm just a waitress, Grandpa, but I finished nursing school 2 years ago. I've been working night shifts at Mass General ever since, and Mom left me a settlement before she died that I never touched. I've been saving like I was in a war, because I think I was. I didn't know what for. Now I know. Go to the cabin. The key is taped inside the back cover of your old Bible, the one you gave me when I was 12, which is now sitting on the kitchen table of that cabin. The address is on the back of my photo. Drive carefully. Stay off the main roads near the house. Don't use your credit cards. Don't call anyone. I'll be there waiting. Grandpa, I love you more than anything on this earth, and I'm so sorry I had to let them hurt you to save you. I love you. Emma. I read it twice with snow melting onto the pages. Then I read a third time, and something inside me that had gone quiet on that bench came back loud and sharp and furious. My granddaughter. The little girl who used to fall asleep on my workshop floor while I wired porch lights for neighbors. She had walked alone through the worst information a person can carry, for 4 months, while sleeping in the same city as a woman who was shopping for a hitman. She had scraped together every dollar she owned and hidden it in a torn duffel bag, because she trusted me to find it. I walked 3 miles through the snow to the Holiday Inn Express off I-93 and paid cash for a room. I slept for 4 hours. At 5 a.m., I took a cab to the long-term parking lot at the train station, where I kept my old Ford pickup, the one I'd bought off a buddy last summer, and never bothered to tell Nathan about. By 6 a.m., I was heading north with the duffel bag in the passenger seat and a thermos of gas station coffee balanced on the dashboard. The sun came up somewhere over Plymouth. I drove through 3 snow squalls and didn't feel any of them. By 9 in the morning, I pulled up to a small log cabin off a dirt road in Franconia, New Hampshire, a red door with a wreath still up from Christmas. The door opened before I turned off the engine. Emma came running out in a flannel shirt and no coat, her hair loose, her face already wet, and she threw herself into me so hard we both almost went down in the snow. "Grandpa," she kept saying into my shoulder. "Grandpa, Grandpa, you made it." I held on to her for a long time, maybe a minute, maybe 10. I don't know. When she finally pulled back, her eyes were swollen and red and steady. "Come inside," she said. "I have so much to show you, and we don't have much time." The cabin was small and warm, smelling like pine smoke and instant coffee. Emma had turned the kitchen table into something that looked like a detective's bulletin board laid flat. Printouts of bank statements. A manila folder labeled Voss. Photographs with dates and locations written on the back. My old Bible sitting at the corner, the spine worn smooth. She walked me through it slowly, like she'd practiced, and I suspect she had. "Grandpa, after I heard that phone call, I went home and I couldn't sleep for 3 nights. On the 4th morning, I called an old friend of mine from nursing school. Her uncle is a retired Massachusetts State Police detective named Raymond Doyle. He's been a private investigator for about a decade. I told him everything. I told him I didn't have money to pay him up front. He told me he'd take it out of the settlement if we got there. If not, he'd do it anyway because he lost his own father to a neglect case and it never left him." She pulled up audio on her laptop. "Detective Doyle installed a listening device in Vanessa's car 2 days after Thanksgiving. She talks on the phone while she drives. A lot." She hit play. Vanessa's voice crystal clear. The old man's holding out. "Nathan is too soft, I swear to God. I've got Declan on standby. He says a fall down the basement stairs. Easy, clean. Maybe a broken hip that turns into pneumonia. He said he's done it before up in Lowell. 35,000 plus expenses." Then Nathan's voice, quieter, further from the microphone. "Vanessa. Jesus Christ. Not that, just the papers. We push the papers." Vanessa laughed. "Your dad is never going to sign those papers, sweetheart. Wake up. We're at the end of the road. Boss takes care of it. We inherit the house. We sell. We pay Boston. And we actually have a life again. Stop being a child." I listened with my hands pressed flat against the table so they wouldn't shake. My son hadn't been the one to suggest it, but he hadn't said no either. He'd said not that. He'd said just the papers. He hadn't walked out. He hadn't called me. He hadn't called the police. He'd sat there while his wife priced out my life, and he kept eating dinner at my table. Emma watched my face carefully. "Grandpa, I know." "Keep going," I said. She showed me the financial records. Nathan owed $1.4 million to a lender named Silvermark Capital out of Boston, a group with a reputation for aggressive collection that fell just short of illegal. Vanessa had blown through $380,000 on offshore gambling sites over 2 years. Their credit cards were maxed. A second mortgage application on my house had been filed in December using a forged signature, mine, and rejected because the bank required me present in person. That rejection, Emma said, was what had sped everything up. Vanessa had moved to Plan B. "Detective Doyle says we have almost enough for conspiracy charges," Emma said. "Almost. But the conversations could still be argued away. She never actually hired Voss on a recording. She only priced him." I nodded slowly. "She needs to commit a real crime. A provable one. Something a jury can touch." "Exactly. And Grandpa, I've been thinking about this for 4 months. If you disappear, really disappear, they'll panic. The loan shark is calling Nathan every other day now. The pressure is already cracking them. If they think you're dead, or might be, they'll try to move on the house fast. Forged deed, fake death certificate, something big enough to charge. I looked at my granddaughter, 24 years old, running a counter-operation out of a cabin in the White Mountains, with a retired detective and a torn duffel bag of her own savings, and I felt something I hadn't felt since Ruth was alive. I felt proud. "Emma," I said, "what do you need from me?" "I need you to stay dead for a while, Grandpa. Can you do that?" I smiled for the first time in what felt like a year. "I can do that just fine." I spent the next 7 weeks as a ghost. Emma had set up the cabin under the name of a nursing school classmate who'd moved to Oregon. No milking. Detective Raymond Doyle drove up twice a week with updates, a thick man in his 60s with a gray crew cut and careful eyes, and he took to me the way men who've been through things sometimes do, quickly and without many words. He and I played cribbage at the kitchen table while Emma ran the operation from her laptop. Back in Concord, Nathan filed a missing persons report the second day. He told the officer I had been emotionally unstable after an argument. He cried on cue. Vanessa stood next to him with her hand on his back, looking appropriately worried. Detective Doyle's contacts inside the department kept us informed. The case was low priority from the start. A competent adult who had stormed out after a family dispute, and it stayed that way. In week 2, Vanessa hired a lawyer to begin the process of declaring me missing and incompetent. In week 3, she reached out to Declan Voss again on her car phone and asked if he could make something real happen, not just paper, because paper is taking too long. Detective Doyle got the recording. It still wasn't an actual contract. It was close. It wasn't enough. In week 4, Nathan made the mistake we'd been waiting for. He hired a forger in South Boston, a man named Patrick Nolan who had a history of document fraud stretching back to the 1990s. Detective Doyle had an informant who knew Nolan and got us the meeting location. On January 31st, Nathan walked into a diner off Dorchester Avenue with photocopies of my signature, and walked out with a quitclaim deed that appeared to transfer the house from me to him. He filed it with the Middlesex County Registry of Deeds on February 4th. On February 7th, he walked into a bank in downtown Concord and secured a home equity line of credit for $1.2 million against the house. He used $900,000 of it within 48 hours to pay Silvermark Capital and quiet the loan shark. The remaining $300,000 Vanessa spent in a week. Jewelry, a used Porsche, a deposit on a condo in Fort Lauderdale. "She thinks she's winning," Emma said, watching the bank records come in. "She thinks you're never coming back." In week 6, something darker. Detective Doyle's bug caught Vanessa on the phone with her sister in Providence. "Once the house sells, we're leaving Nathan in the dust. He's a liability. He knows too much, and he cries in the bathroom every night. I'm done with him. I'll file for divorce from Florida, and the prenup won't matter because half the equity is already in my name through the condo." Her sister said something I couldn't hear. Vanessa laughed. "Oh, honey, Nathan's going to learn what it feels like to be the one thrown out." I listened to that, and I watched Emma's face go still. My son had tried to kill me. My son's wife was about to discard him the same way he'd discarded me. There's a dark poetry in certain families that nobody asks for. "Grandpa," Emma said quietly, "he's still your son." "I know," I said, "but he made choices. We're going to give him one more." Detective Doyle connected us with an FBI agent named Bianca Ortega, who had been monitoring Silvermark Capital for 2 years as part of a larger loan sharking investigation. Nathan's $900,000 payment to them had lit up her system. When we brought her the full picture, my disappearance, Vanessa's recordings, the forged deed, the laundered loan payoff, she leaned back in her chair and whistled low. "Mr. Kessler," she said, "I've been looking for a reason to take Silvermark down for a long time. You just handed me 3. We built the plan together in the cabin over a week of long nights. Detective Doyle, Agent Ortega, Emma, and me. The forgery alone was a felony. The fraudulent mortgage was another. The conspiracy recordings, combined with the hitman pricing, were enough for prosecutors to move. But we wanted it public. We wanted Nathan and Vanessa to understand, in front of witnesses, exactly what they had done and exactly who had beaten them. Emma found the opportunity. Vanessa had planned a birthday party for herself on March 9th at a rented banquet hall at the Copley Square Hotel in Boston. 60 guests. Her parents coming up from Connecticut, her sister from Providence, a handful of her pharmaceutical company colleagues. A local magazine had agreed to send the photographer because Vanessa had pitched it as a comeback celebration for their family. She wanted the pictures. We decided to give her pictures she'd remember forever. Emma and Detective Doyle prepared a 14-minute video. It opened with the missing persons report Nathan had filed, his performance at the police station, then the audio of Vanessa pricing a hit on me with subtitles, then the forged deed, side by side with my real signature, magnified, then the bank records, then the silver mark payoff, then Vanessa's call to her sister about leaving Nathan, and at the end, a single frame of me, alive, holding that morning's Boston Globe. Agent Ortega arranged for 6 agents to be present at the banquet hall as guests. Arrest warrants were prepared for Nathan, Vanessa, and a third party against Silvermark Capital's managing partner, who had accepted the laundered payoff. A judge in the Eastern District of Massachusetts signed off on everything. On the morning of March 9th, I put on the dark gray suit I'd worn to Ruth's 60th birthday. My hand shook while I tied the tie, not from fear, but from something closer to grief. Whatever happened that night, my son's life was about to end in one form and begin in another. Emma drove me to Boston. She held my hand for most of the ride. At 7:30 that evening, I stood in a small staff hallway behind the banquet hall with Agent Ortega and her team. Through the kitchen door, I could hear the murmur of 60 voices, the clink of glasses, Vanessa's laugh rising above it all. Somebody called for a toast. Nathan got up to speak. I could hear his voice through the wall. I want to thank everyone for being here tonight for the love of my life. This year's been hard. We lost my father in January, and we still hold out hope he'll come home safe. But Vanessa has been my rock through all of it. I don't know where I'd be without her. A polite, uncertain round of applause. Then Vanessa took the microphone. Thank you all. Nathan and I have been through a storm, but we're coming out stronger to new beginnings. Glasses clinked. The lights dimmed. A slideshow was supposed to start, photos from their trip to Cabo last year. Instead, the screen went black. Then my face appeared. My name is Walter Kessler, the video said in my voice. I'm 67 years old. I'm not missing. I'm not dead. I'm standing in the hallway of this hotel right now. And in the next 14 minutes, I'm going to show you who my son really married and what my son chose not to stop. I heard the room go silent. Then a woman gasped. Then Vanessa's voice sharp. Turn that off. Turn that off right now. The video kept rolling. The audio of her pricing a hit played over her own birthday party. Her voice filled the room, clean and unmistakable. And I heard her own mother cry out. The forged deed appeared on the screen next to my real signature. Her sister from Providence was on the screen being quoted from a private call. And then Vanessa's voice came on again, telling that same sister she was going to leave Nathan in the dust. I stepped through the kitchen door and walked down the center aisle between the tables. The room exploded. Gasps. A chair knocked over. Somebody dropped a wine glass. Vanessa stood frozen at the head table, her face the color of cold ash. Nathan looked at me like a man seeing the ghost, which in a way he was. His mouth opened and closed and no sound came out. I walked up the steps to the little stage where they stood. Dad, Nathan whispered. Dad, I didn't. I never. You knew, I said quietly. You knew and you ate my food and you slept in my house and you let her pick a price. Agent Ortega and 2 other agents stepped in my house and you let her pick a price. Agent Ortega and 2 other agents stepped onto the stage beside me. Nathan Kessler. Vanessa Kessler. You're both under arrest. Vanessa lunged for the microphone. This is a setup. This is a lie. My husband is the one who... She didn't finish. She didn't get to. The agents had her hands behind her back before she could reach the mic stand. Nathan didn't resist. He just stood there looking at me. His eyes filled. My boy's eyes. I saw the 14-year-old and the 10-year-old and the 4-year-old and the man, all of them collapsed together behind a pair of handcuffs. "I'm sorry, Dad," he said. "I know you are," I said. "That's what makes it the hardest part." They walked him off the stage. The photographer the magazine had sent kept taking pictures. Good. Vanessa had wanted pictures. Emma came up the steps and slipped her hand into mine. We stood there together while Boston PD escorted 60 people out of the banquet hall into the March night. The rest happened the way these things do, slow and grinding. Vanessa took her case to trial and lost. She was convicted of solicitation to commit murder, conspiracy, wire fraud, and mortgage fraud. The judge, a woman in her late 50s who listened to her own mother testify about the birthday party, sentenced her to 22 years in federal prison. No parole for at least 17. Nathan took a plea deal. He pled guilty to conspiracy to commit fraud, mortgage fraud, and filing false documents. The prosecutor let him walk the murder conspiracy charge in exchange for full testimony against Silvermark Capital's managing partner. He got 9 years. He'll serve about 6. He sent me 3 letters from prison in the first month. I haven't opened them. I haven't thrown them out either. They sit on a shelf in the cabin in Franconia. Silvermark Capital's managing partner got 11 years, and the organization got dismantled. Agent Ortega sent me a bottle of good bourbon with a card that said, "You gave me a case I'll retire on, thank you." The house in Concord was returned to me free and clear. The fraudulent $1.2 million mortgage was voided through a federal court order. I walked through those rooms one Saturday in April with Emma beside me. We stood in the kitchen where Vanessa had priced my death. We stood in the living room where Ruth had taught Nathan to dance at age 5. We stood in the workshop where I'd raised him. "Grandpa," Emma said, "what do you want to do?" I looked around at 42 years of my life inside those walls, and I told her the truth. Ruth isn't here anymore. Nathan isn't who I thought he was. These walls don't mean what I thought they meant. We're going to sell it. The house sold in June for $2.05 million. I gave Emma $1 million outright, no arguments, no conditions. She used $620,000 of it to replace what she'd emptied from her savings for me. The rest she put into a down payment on a small home health practice in the Lakes region of New Hampshire, specializing in elder care. She hired 3 nurses in the first 6 months. Her mission statement, framed on the wall of her office, reads, "Every old person deserves a witness." I kept the cabin in Franconia. I bought the lot next to it and spent the summer building a workshop on it. Same dimensions as the one behind the Concord house, same insulation, same heavy oak workbench that Ruth helped me install 31 years ago. I run a small program out of it now called Second Saw Carpentry, teaching basic woodworking and home repair to men over 60 who got pushed out of their own homes by family, by circumstance, by the slow erosion that nobody talks about. My first class had 7 students. We built birdhouses. Then we built a porch swing. Then we built a storage shed for the local food pantry. Emma and I have Sunday dinner together every week, without fail. She brings up a casserole. I make pie. Sometimes Detective Doyle and his wife drive up and join us. Agent Ortega calls twice a year. People ask me how I knew Emma was telling the truth in that letter, how I trusted a 4-page note in a bag of cash in a snowstorm. I tell them this. Trust isn't something you decide in an emergency. Trust is something you deposit quietly every day for 24 years, and then one day a bank you didn't know existed opens up and lets you withdraw exactly what you put in. My son forgot I'd been making deposits in Emma for her entire life. He made one more mistake, and I tell this to every man in my workshop because I need them to hear it. He confused being old with being finished. He looked at his 67-year-old father in house slippers, and he saw somebody to be managed. He did not see a man who had wired half of Concord by hand, who had buried his wife and kept breathing, who had spent 4 decades learning exactly how long patience can wait before it has to act. Nathan thought age was a weakness. Age is a library, and anyone who reads even a little of it is dangerous to the people who haven't. I don't hate my son. I want to say that clearly. I grieve him like I grieve Ruth, the way you grieve someone you built a life around who is gone now in the specific shape they used to be. But I am not alone. I have Emma. I have a workshop. I have a class of 7 old men who saw their first dovetail joints this spring and went home standing straighter than they arrived. That torn duffel bag my son threw at my feet in the snow that night. He thought he was handing me garbage. He was handing me the rest of my life. He just didn't know my granddaughter had packed it. If you're sitting somewhere right now watching this, and someone has made you feel like trash, like a burden, like the next thing to be discarded, listen to me carefully. You are not your slippers. You are not your age. You are not the room somebody decided you'd take up. You are 40, 50, 60, 70 years of people you've loved, and things you've built, and moments you showed up when nobody was watching. Somebody noticed. Somebody always notices. And when the door slams and the snow starts falling, check the bag. Just check the bag. I'm Walter Kessler. I'm 68 now. I'm still here. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from tonight. And if somebody in your life has been your Emma, say their name out loud. They deserve to be said. Thank you for listening. There's more coming.